And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods. And Israel joined himself unto Baal-peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said unto Moses, Take all the heads of the people, and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. And Moses said unto the judges of Israel, Slay ye every one his man that were joined unto Baal-peor. And behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses, and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he arose up from among the congregation, and took a javelin in his hand. And he went after the man of Israel into the tent, and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly. So the plague was stayed from the children of Israel. And those that died in the plague were 20 and 4,000. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, hath turned my wrath away from the children of Israel, while he was zealous for my sake among them, that I consume not the children of Israel in my jealousy. Wherefore say, Behold, I give unto him my covenant of peace, and he shall have it, and his seed after him, even the covenant of an everlasting priesthood, because he was zealous for his God, and made an atonement for the children of Israel. Now the name of the Israelite that was slain, even that was slain with the Midianitish woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, a prince of a chief house among the Simeonites. And the name of the Midianitish woman that was slain was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur. He was head over a people and of a chief house in Midian. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Vex the Midianites, and smite them, for they vexed you with their wiles, wherewith they have beguiled you in the matter of Peor, and in the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of a prince of Midian, their sister, which was slain in the day of the plague for Peor's sake. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you that we're able to read your word, Lord, and that we can have the inspired and preserved word of God. Lord, I pray that you just help us to appreciate this word that you've preserved, Lord, and I pray that we would just read it and study it, Lord, and I pray as our pastor comes before us, Lord, to present this Numbers chapter 25 to us, that you just give him clarity of speech, Lord, and that you just help him to just speak with power and fervency, Lord, and that, Lord, if we've committed some sin today or maybe this past week, Lord, that you would just convict us, Lord, and your Holy Spirit would show us where we've erred. And Lord, I pray that you just help us to be zealous like Phinehas, Lord, and when it comes to sin, Lord, that we would just get rid of it out of our lives, and that we would just do what's right, Lord. And I thank you for this day, Lord. I pray for my dad, Lord, as he's at work, Lord. Give him safety, Lord. Keep him safe as he's working with dangerous equipment, Lord. I also pray for my mom and my sister, Lord, that you help them to be safe, Lord, and have a safe travel down to Oklahoma. And also my little sister Lizzie, she's in Pasco, Lord. Keep her protected, Lord. And ask us in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Daniel. Numbers chapter 25. And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. This is a pretty sad story, and it's a pretty crazy story as well, is the fact that we spent several chapters just studying Balaam and how that God refused to curse Israel. He says, who can I curse whom I've blessed? How can I do that? But then we're going to notice here an important fact is that oftentimes, while God will not curse us, oftentimes we can bring the wrath of God down upon ourselves. And here in this passage we're going to see the important thing that a lot of times that the wiles of the devil are what is going to get us. It's not the full frontal assault. It's not the curse of God, some person attacking us or somebody fighting on us one-on-one, but it's going to be the wiles of the devil that are going to get us. And this is the tried and true classic wile of the devil, is to get women of daughters of men, women, to commit whoredom with the men of God. What is the biggest problem in the religious, quote-unquote, community today? Whoredom, right? You know, these supposed priests that are supposed to be single, what are they doing? They're committing whoredom. Not only that, they're homosexual as well, and all these crazy things that not only do they commit fornication with women, they also do it with men, and they do it with whatever else. And I'm not going to get into all that, but the fact remains is that so oftentimes is that religious people and whoredom seem to go hand in hand. And we're going to show in this passage as well, this thing is that true religious people, godly people, righteous people, are pure people and holy people. But people who are joined in the matter of Baal-peor, people that are joined in fornication outside of marriage and outside of and deviant behaviors and alternative lifestyles, those people who claim to be religious and yet are involved in such evil acts are in fact not Christians at all, but are in fact people of Baal. And so we need to understand that in the ancient culture here is that there were worshipers of the Lord Jesus Christ, no, not Lord Jesus Christ, but Jehovah, which is the God of the Bible, the God of this land, and people like Jethro worship Jehovah. But then in equal opposition to them were these people who said, and they were both called the Lord, these people that worshiped the Lord, or called Baal. Baal just means Lord or Master. And so oftentimes we generically call, the Lord this and Lord that. But the question is, what Lord are you worshiping? Are you worshiping a Lord who says free love and sex for everybody? Or are you worshiping a Lord that calls you to purity? A Lord that calls you to holiness? And the difference between the two, you'll notice, it will be one that is joined with the world and say free love, free sex, free everything, and sex outside of marriage and a fleshly carnal attitude is what they worship, versus the God of the Bible, which says only in the bonds of matrimony are you supposed to have relationships with one another in this way. And so here in this passage, we see that Israel could not be cursed by God, nor could it be cursed by corrupted preachers, nor could it be cursed by anybody, but they willfully giving themselves over to this sin caused them to corrupt themselves and caused the wrath of God to come down upon them and caused them to be hindered in the matter of Baal-peor. So when you compromise Christ, when you compromise Christianity, and then you mingle it with whoredom, what you're having is not Christ and true love and true religion, but rather you are having a Baalish religion. Your Catholic priest that fornicates and does those evil things, he's not a Christian. He is a Baalite. He is a sodomite. He is a compromised person. He is not worshiping your Lord. He is worshiping Baal. And so, just as in the ancient world, where Jehovah was called a Lord, capital L-O-R-D, as an alternative to Jehovah, so too Baal was called Lord, but they were not the same Lord. So oftentimes people say, the Catholics worship the same Jesus and the same God, and the Mormons worship the same Jesus as the same God, and the Jehovah's Witnesses worship the same Jesus and the same God, but they're not the same. They may be calling them by the same name, but they're not the same. We worship the God of the Bible, the God of holiness, the God of purity. Here this passage says, and Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. Now we need to understand that this is the tried and true tactic of the devil, is to get God's people that are saved, caught up in fornication, caught up into alternative lifestyles, caught up in a state of impurity, and then they say, this is fine and dandy. And one of these, I hate to bring it up, but basically one of these supposed women preachers came out the other day and said that even pornography is fine and wholesome if what is it called? If it was ethnically sourced. What in the world is that? But this supposed Catholic, or she had the little, I'm not sure if she's real Catholic or anything, she had the little collar on, and she was all dressed in that garb and stuff, and she says, As long as it's ethnically sourced, it's just fine. It's pure, it's holy, it's wonderful. And then another, one of those supposed self-appointed, what the thing on was a homosexual guy, and he says, oh, it's fine if you have these alternative lifestyles and things, even when you're not in marriage. Outside of marriage, it's just fine for anybody to do. Oh, that's what the people of Baal are into. And notice here, this passage, it starts out with, and Israel abode in Shittim. Now, where's the last time we saw that word from? Now, Shittim is the shittim wood from the acacia tree. And basically what that is, it grew in the area, and the last time we saw that is where I believe it was that was gopher wood. So I'm getting my arcs mixed up. But anyway, so, but basically, is that, yeah, that's the ark, not the ark of Noah. But basically, in Genesis chapter 6, verse 1 through 4, we saw the same situation. And then also when they come back in the land in Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 23 through 30, we also see a similar situation, is that the devil oftentimes, when they are just coming into the land, or they are just becoming holy, or they become enticed with the wiles of the devil, with fornication. We see this in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, with the righteous and the wicked before the flood. You see this let's look over there in Genesis chapter 6. It says in verse 1, and it came to pass, when the men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all that they chose. Now, of course, if you look at chapter 4 and 5, it's talking about the two types of the two generations, one of Adam and Seth and the righteous that stayed with God, and then you have the generations of Cain, who basically left the face of the Lord and built in the wilderness his cities and named them after his sons, and grew up a nation of men that did not regard the Lord, that just lived as men. They didn't live after the devil. They just lived as men without God, and it grew a big society with music and different stuff, and they just were full-fledged society. And these two separate societies, one following after Adam and God and Seth and the righteousness, they were on one side, and then the people that went off into the wilderness that were basically expelled from the land, Cain and his people that left the face of the Lord, grew and multiplied. That's the people that are growing and multiplying. It's not the people that stayed with God and followed after God and called upon the name of the Lord in the time of Enos, but rather it was the people that left God and began to multiply. Those who left God were just called men. Men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and took them wives of all whom they chose. So the people that were following after God were men after God's own heart and different things, and in that society, they saw these people that were cast out from before the face of the Lord, and saw that they were multiplying and had this great, wonderful society. They said, hey, let's not just be separated from these people anymore. Let's mingle among them. Let's marry among them. And that's what happened. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all that they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. In other words, in 120 years he's going to destroy and wipe them out. That's what they said. And there were giants in the earth in those days. Also that when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, when they bare children of them, the same became mighty men, and were of old men of renown. So in other words, saved men got married with unsaved women, and then their children, they basically grew into great men on the earth, influential men, men that were able to influence all of society. The giants there can mean stature, but also in reputation. They were giant stature and reputation. Of course, there's genetic hybrid breeding. If you take two separate lines of people that have been separate for a long time, and then you mingle them together, then you'll get a heretosis effect that makes them larger than both parents. And they do this with corn all the time, different crops and things. If you're involved in farming, you know the effect. They keep two separate lines separate, and then that first or second generation is always larger than the two previously separated lines. And so that creates somebody who is larger. I don't have time to go into that. That's not part of the message. But basically, the gist of it is these people became stronger, larger, more intelligent, and the combined lines, that generation grew up to be influential in both sides of these cities, both communities. And then God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, that every imagination and thoughts of his heart was evil continually. This mingling of cultures didn't make both cultures righteous, it made both cultures wicked. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth. You know, in other words, allowed the men to multiply and not be before his face and to be away from him. This is why because remember, he had, Cain left the presence of the Lord, he departed, and he multiplied on the face of the earth, and that's who God repented of allowing. Because why? Did these men without God contaminated the righteous men that were with God, and then caused it. So he didn't repent of having the sons of God, you know, the people that were saved, that followed after him. He didn't repent of them. He repented of allowing this other community to grow without him. And that's what he repented of. And that's why when Christ comes with 10,000 of his saints, he's going to make a righteous nation. He's going to cut off those people, just like in the flood. And he repented of the Lord, and he had made man on the earth, and he grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, the creeping thing, fowl of the air, for repent me that I have made them. Because now they're all corrupted, now they're away from his face. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So only Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord in that time. And in this passage, only Phineas finds grace in the eyes of the Lord. So that's quite interesting, the situations. There was an ark there of Noah, and there's an ark of shittim wood here, and there's Phineas, but I'm not going to go into those associations because those, I think, are a little too fabricated. Okay, so here in this passage, the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab, just like what happened there. And then also in Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 23, you know, that the kingdom is lost to them. They go off in Babylon, and finally they get permission to return. They get a Baal-peor document from the king of the Medes and the Persian guy, Cyrus, and they go back into the land. They get permission to go back into the land, and they build up a community there. And the natives there say, "Hey, you don't belong here. You're not real people here. You don't belong here." Hey, that sounds familiar. Did that happen before? I don't know. Okay, so Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 23. Looking there, Nehemiah. I believe that is in the Ezra and Nehemiah. That is in the first part before the Psalms. Before Job, before Esther, so Ezra, Nehemiah chapter 13. Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 23. It says, in those days also, now remember this, they're returning to land, they're rebuilding the temple, they're rebuilding everything, and they're trying to make a righteous nation once again. They're basically a community right now. And in those days saw I Jews that had married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab. Hey, you know, Moab, just as in chapter 25 here. And their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. So did they become, did the people that they married become their children? Did they become Jewish, or did they speak in the other languages? Who influenced who? It was God's people marrying the daughters of men that caused their children to go astray and not follow the Lord. And same thing here. And their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. And I contended with them, and cursed them, and smote certain of them, and plucked off their hair, and made them swear by God, saying, Ye shall not give your daughters unto the sons, nor take your daughters unto your sons for yourselves. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin by these things? Oh, look, another instance of this. See, it happened in Genesis, happened with Solomon, and it happened with the people coming back into the land, is that the sons of God saw the daughters of men and came unto them and had children that were corrupted. And Nehemiah is so disgusted by this that they're going down the same path. This happened 3 times before in their history, and with Genesis and the Numbers, and then with Solomon. And he's like, hey, it ain't happening again. I ain't doing this again. And that's why he's so adamant. That's why he's so mad here. Why is he pulling people's hair? Aren't they just I mean, is it a wrong thing to marry somebody outside of your language and culture? No, it's not a wrong thing. But if you look at this passage, you study it out, you see that they were corrupting them by not conforming to God, but to the idols and the pagan and Baal and all these different things of the world that were there in those other cultures, and not back to Christ, not back to God. He says, verse 26, did not Solomon king of Israel sin by these things? Yet among many nations was there no king like him, who was beloved of God, and God made him king over all of Israel. So, God made the children of Seth, the sons of God. He made them the sons of God. He made them a great nation for them and all those things before the flood. But then the daughters of men destroyed them. He saved them by lifting up the serpent in the wilderness, saved them from the spiritual serpents, saved them from fiery serpents. And yet they went off here. And then Solomon, he gave him a great wonderful king that King David built and Solomon enhanced. And then came along the wiles of the devil, and he says, who was beloved of his God, and God made him king over all of Israel. Nevertheless, even him did outlandish women cause to sin. So it's not that these were just women or anything, but they were outlandish women, women who were committed to turning their hearts away from the Lord. Shall we then hearken unto you to do all this great evil? This is considered a great evil. So don't listen to somebody who says, oh, it's okay to live in fornication. It's okay to live outside of matrimony. It's okay to live all of these things. It's okay to go marry one person being a Christian, another person being a Catholic, or some other religion. No, what you need to understand is that you need to be, your family needs to be all Christian, all saved. That's why you're not supposed to marry an unbeliever, is because you need to be both believers, because otherwise they will draw them away. And if you get saved and then your wife becomes an unbeliever, you patiently deal with them, or your husband is an unbeliever, you deal with them and pray for them, sanctify them, encourage them through the Spirit that they might be saved. But otherwise, if you have the opportunity to marry a believer, you have to marry a believer. You don't say, well, I'm going to marry an unbeliever and hopefully one day they will become saved. No, if you are married to an unbeliever, then that covenant doesn't automatically get broken. You have to abide with them. And we can deal with some of those things later. But shall we then hearken unto you to do this great evil, to transgress against our God, even in marrying, what? Strange wives. Strange there means fleshly. You marry them not because they're Christian, not because they're a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, but rather because they are sexual, rather because they are promiscuous, and they are not normal, they are strange. If you look at something that says strange, then that means like, oh, they're unique. No, we just say that they're creepy. They're weird. They don't have the same mindset. They're strange. They're strange. They're strangers. You want to have somebody that is not strange from God. They're not estranged from God. And marrying strange wives. And one of the sons of Joadah, the son of Elisha, the high priest, was son-in-law to Sanballat the Hornite. Therefore I chased him from me. Hey, this guy is married into our enemy. Sanballat was the enemy, God trying to hinder the people of God, and this son of the high priest was married to his daughter. How dare you? Oh, but we're Romeo and Juliet. Come on. I chased them from me. That's how important it is. Well, you just gotta tolerate them. You just gotta put a smile on your face, No, you chase them from me. Oh, it's okay. They're just quiet in the back seat of the church, and they just love Jesus too. No, I chased them from me. That's why we need to understand that people are mixed up in this strange stuff promiscuously. knowing the will of God and yet delighting in those, just as Romans 1 says, we don't say, oh, that's okay, you love Jesus, we love Jesus, let's kumbaya together. And no, he says, chase them from you. That's why these type of people that are promiscuous and bold and arrogant in their wicked lifestyles, they're not allowed in the church. There's the door. Get away from us. Remember them, oh my God, because they have defiled the priesthood. These fornicators supposedly calling themselves priests, these fornicators supposedly calling themselves pastors, that say you can have sexuality outside of marriage, these relationships outside of marriage. God's going to remember you. He's going to remember you, and because they have defiled the priesthood and the covenant of the priesthood and of the Levites. Thus cleansed I them from all strangers, and appointed the wards of the priests and the Levites, every one in his business. He cleansed them. Hey, you guys got a more important business. I'm nullifying all these marriages you've made. Basically, he had them divorce all these people and send them back to their respective families. And they left and went to their own people. And now, of course, obviously, now we understand with the picture of Ruth, is that if they had converted to Christ, they would be accepted. But if they were as Ruth's sister, whoever it was, that went back to her people and to her gods, they left. But Ruth said, no, your gods will be my gods, or your God will be my God, and your people will be my people. That's what Ruth said. And Ruth became part of the lineage of Christ. So this is not about genetic relationships. This is about people who follow after God. It wasn't about, oh, you know, those people that were born after Cain went unto these men that were born after Seth, and that was the problem. No, it was the people that went from the face of God, and the people that were before God in salvation, they went unto the people that had rejected God. They went to the people that rejected God because they thought they were sexy, not because they thought they were spiritual. So that was the problem there. And so here it says, commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab, and they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods. See, they drew them through whoredom to their gods, because basically in the religion, their false religion is centered around sexuality. True religion is centered around spirituality and Christ and heavenly things and the Spirit, walking after the Spirit. But the way you can tell that you're following after a false religion, even if they call themselves by the same names as ours, is that the true religion follows after Christ and spiritual things. False religion follows after the flesh and sexual things. This is why we preach against homosexuality. This is why we preach against fornication. This is why we preach against adultery. This is why we preach against sodomy and all these different horrified sexual sins, because it's the direct opposite of what Christ called us to. If you walk in the flesh, you'll die in the flesh. And so we understand that those people that put on the little collar and do all the religious garb, and they say, I'm following after Christ, and we love everyone, and sexuality, no matter your sexual identity, and they don't care about your identity, because a lot of times these people will say, I am a homosexual Christian. Their flesh comes before their spirit name. You know, they talk about spirit animals. Their flesh animal comes before their spirit animal. Their flesh is who they identify with, and oh, by the way, I follow Christ, but in my flesh. I follow Christ as a homosexual. I don't follow Christ as a Christian. See the problem there? They are trying to cause their flesh to have Christ and the ways of Christ and the followers of Christ submit to their identity in the flesh. And so that's the big problem with this, because we are Christians. We have sins, we have problems, but it's Christ. And then Christ deals with our sins, and then we become one with Christ. We don't have Christ and our sexual sins. We have Christ and then we conform to his image. This is the problem with trying to have alternative lifestyles. There's only one lifestyle you should have, and that is the lifestyle of Christ. If you have a lifestyle that is alternative to Christ, you are antichrist. You claim it's Christ, but it is antichrist. It is in place of Christ. And so we need to understand there are many spirits of antichrist in the world today, and they are a picture of saying, oh, we love you. We don't care who you are. No, we care that you become like Christ. We don't care that we demand that you not be homosexual. We demand that you not be a sodomite. We demand that you not be caught up in sexual sins. We demand that you die daily to flesh and conform to Christ and walk after the Spirit. That is the Christian life. And those who go down that Romans 1 spiral of sin, it's all focused on their flesh and having God in their knowledge, but not wishing to retain God in their knowledge, gave them up to a reprobate mind. And so we need to understand that these people here, they draw them away by the flesh to their gods. They take the flesh and conform it to the spirit of the devil. You think you're just enjoying fleshly things, and you're rejecting Jesus, and you're rejecting his spirit, so you can enjoy these fleshly things? The flesh will draw you to the spirit of the devil until you become his child. When you become his child, you become reprobate. When you become reprobate, you no longer desire to seek after the Lord. And reprobates and sodomites, they desire not only not to seek after the Lord, but to conform the things of the Lord to themselves. And so that's another message for another time. We need to understand here, they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods. And the people did eat. These are saved people now. Remember that they looked to the Lord that was lifted up in the wilderness? They did eat and bowed down to their gods. They submitted the thing that God saved in the Spirit, the thing that God gave them in the Spirit, their salvation, and their walk to be a holy nation. And they took that, and they flung it down to and submitted it to the gods of this world, the gods of flesh, the gods of sexuality. That's what you do when you take the priesthood and the Christianity and all that and say, oh yeah, I am identifying as this fleshly thing. Now the spiritual thing needs to submit to my fleshly thing. It needs to conform to me. It needs to conform to my sexual desires. See, that's the problem with this world today, is they say, what's the problem with this fleshly alternative lifestyle? Problem is trying to force God to conform to it, and rather than it to conform to God, and trying to identify as if it were God. And Israel joined himself unto Baal-peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. Problem was, in Genesis, it brought a flood. Here, it brings disease. In Solomon's day, it brought a destruction of a nation. In Nehemiah's day, it brought compromise. It brought fornication. It brought evil, and he had to violently, physically forbid people to do these things. That's how bad it was. Israel joined himself into Baal-peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. Balaam couldn't do it. Balack couldn't do it. You know, what's the old saying? If you can't beat them, what do? Join them, right? The fornicators of this world, the sexual alternative lifestyles of this world couldn't beat us. You know, they cannot prevail against. See, the problem with Christianity, we need to understand, is that the world cannot prevail against us. They have no power against us. No spiritual dart of the devil can harm us from without. But what do? You join them. You infiltrate them. You get them to conform to you from the inside out. And so what the problem here is that this is what the devil is always doing, is that he cannot prevail against the gates until he pretends to become one with them and go in through the gates and then defile it. And so he can't get through the hedge, but he pretends to be a sheep and gets in there. We'll talk about that more tonight when we talk about the wolves that come from without, and the false preachers that come from within to corrupt and harm the flock, not sparing the flock. And we'll talk about that tonight, how that Paul desires that we as pastors watch out for this sort of thing. Today, pastors are not watching out for this sort of thing. This is what gets us every time, is fornication with the flesh. If we stay spiritual, and strong in the Lord, nothing can prevail against us, but every single time it's the flesh entering in, the pride, the arrogancy, the fleshly, trying to take over the spiritual from within, not from without. And he says here, and the Lord said unto him, he says, his anger was kindled against them. Now we understand that Baal is, again, I want to make this clear, is Canaanite is the fertility god. Their focus is on sexuality and so forth. And of course, this is a corruption of what God gave the first command to people in Genesis chapter 1, verse 22. The first command of mankind is to go forth and multiply. Genesis chapter 1, verse 22. Says, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and fill the waters in the seas, and let every fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And verse 26, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And so the corruption of what they did is they took a command of God, and then they centered on it rather than on God. They made it the God, taking the creature and making it God, not regarding the Creator and worship the creature. And so their goal was that however we can have fertility, that is what we need to do. However we can multiply people among us, that is what we need to do. And we'll go more, we'll talk about that a little bit more, how oftentimes people, you see, God wants us to go forth and multiply, but the thing is He wants us to do it in the bounds of what He commanded us. Not just take one command and do it however we please. And so we need to understand that yes, it is from God to do these things, but it is not from God to do it in any old way we please, but rather to follow Him in all things. Now, we understand as well as that this advice was not given by the Midianite women, but rather it was given by Balack. Balack went beyond what the Word of God told him to do, beyond what the other chapters said, even though it doesn't say that Balack did, or Balaam did, told them to do this thing, but what the Scripture says in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 15 through 16, it says, he's talking about false prophets that will be among the people later on, among the New Testament church. He says, which have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bosor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, because they desired to have an occupation, they desired to have a money. Because of that, they compromised the ministry. But was rebuked of his iniquity. The dumb ass speaking with a man's voice forbade the madness of the prophet. So he said, you're not allowed to go. You're not allowed to do these things. And then God says, you're only supposed to do what I tell you. And yet He goes beyond and tells them to join them. To go and to fornicate with them. Revelation chapter 2, verse 14 says, he says that this is what he is what tells us that chapter 25 of what Balaam recommended. He says, but I have a few things against thee, because he's talking to a church now, because thou hast there them that hold to the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balack to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. To allow fornication and take them off to sacrificing to other idols, to other gods. If you can't beat them, join them. This is what he basically gave them advice to. He told them how that God had blessed this nation, and how that God was not going to curse this nation, and that the only way to defeat them was to be one with them. Because he kind of hinted at these things where he says, oh, I wish I were to die with the righteous. Oh, I wish I were one with this nation. How beautiful and wonderful their tents are. How great they are. He kind of skirted through his messages, kind of hinting at the fact that, oh, maybe if you were to join them, you could defile them and prevent them from being blessed by the Lord. And so that is what Revelation tells us that he was doing. And of course, because he hinted at this and he allowed this to happen, you see, as preachers, we're not supposed to kind of do buddy-buddy with the world of the flesh and say, well, they love Jesus too, and they call him Baal, they call him Lord as well, and so we're brothers in Christ and all these things, and it's okay if they're a little off on that, but rather we are supposed to reprove the deceitful workers of darkness and so forth. But because Balaam did not rebuke Balack for trying to hurt the people of God, rather he conformed to him and gave him advice and helped them out. Hey, here's how you can get those pesky Christians to be hurt. Here's how you can do this little sneak attack on them. Here's how, Christians should not be telling the lost world how to hurt Christians. It ought never occur, but it does. Supposed Christians that are actually people of the devil infiltrate and say, hey, this is how you can mess them up. See? Of course, Numbers chapter 31, verse 7 through 8 tells us what happens to Balaam. And they warred against the Midianites as the Lord commanded Moses, and they slew all the males, and he slew the king of the Midian beside the rest of them that were slain, namely Evi and Recham and Zur and Hur and Reba, 5 kings of the Midian. Balaam also, the son of Bozor, they slew with the sword. But he was a righteous man of God. No, they slew him because he was identified with them. See, if you want to identify with the world, you'll die with the world. He enjoyed his money, but only for a short time. You see, when you are tempted by temporary things, you'll lose out on eternal things. Whether that's if you're not saved, you'll lose out on salvation. If you're saved, you'll lose out on rewards. You'll lose out on authority. You'll lose out on many things. And so, because this is such an evil sin, and because of this wickedness, he says, well, there's nothing we can do about it. This is what the Lord says, and he says, and the Lord said unto Moses, take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. What is it saying? He says, these people in your land, you need to kill them. Because the thing is that they're going to destroy Israel, because I'm angry with all of Israel because of these individuals. And the reason why God is, there's no power in certain churches because they're allowing these people in, fornicating with these people and all these things, and allowing these alternative lifestyles in. And when they allow these alternative lifestyles in, the people that are fornicating with them, they need to be kicked out of the church as well. Those people that are sympathetic to these wicked lifestyles need to be kicked out of the church as well, because they're the ones who are bringing them in. They're the ones who are making it welcome. And so here in this passage it says, those that are bringing them in, you need to, as a judgment to the nation. Now this is not church and law. Now I'm not going to be coming around and saying, oh, you sympathetic to this lifestyle? I'm going to cut your head off and stick it up here and right along the posies or whatever, or whatever. What are these things called? Poinsettias, yeah. I'm going to punch your head right along the poinsettias as decoration so that the church will learn to fear. Not doing it, folks. Because this is a national thing. It's a different covenant. It's a different thing. It's basically, up to a few years ago, it was a death sentence to be a sodomite and to live as that and to do these wicked things and to groom children for deviant lifestyles. This was wicked, and it was many states it was by death. And here, it was by death in their nation as well. Because, why? Because they brought disease into the land. We're going to see that God was angry with them and allowed a plague to spread among them. And the thing is like, well, that's not very nice of them. You should just let the plague go along. No, the thing is that they were spreading disease and they would make the nation weak and they would destroy the nation and kill a lot of people. We're going to see how many people were killed in the matter of Peor. Is that 42,000, I believe it is, were killed because they allowed these people to come in and spread disease and fornication and evil and wickedness. 24,000 people died from the sexual disease that spread among them because they fornicated in this way. Well, there was a time in Panama when they were building the Panama Canal, is that people kept on dying of malaria. They could not build anything there. They could not be productive anything there. They could not build the Panama Canal because many of the people just kept on dying and nobody wanted to work there. So at the time, the Panama Canal was kind of like a colony of the United States. And the United States, the governor or whoever it was that was in charge of it basically said, okay, there's going to be severe fines for any standing water in the city, in the district. And so if somebody on their land had standing water, and you know, of course, the public people would do certain landscaping to get rid of puddles and disinfect the ponds and kill all the mosquitoes, and they had a very strong, efficient killing of the mosquitoes plan that was put in place, and severe fines and imprisonment, perhaps, if you were to arrogantly allow standing water on your property, because it would breed malaria and disease and kill a lot of people. And so because you were held responsible, because you knew that stuff would breed malaria and kill people if you allowed it to stand, you would be held responsible for any deaths that would occur because you refused to do that. And they severely punished the people, and because of that they were able to build the canal, and they were able to save that nation from malaria. And so it was, the punishment was severe, but it was because the plague was severe. You have right now a big epidemic of AIDS. You have a big epidemic of diseases, and their solution is not just to be pure, but rather let's have ways to stop the disease while we can still fornicate. Let's have and their alternative, rather than purity, stops 100% of sexually transmitted diseases. Did you know that? 100% prevention. And obviously there's deviant things that people put on needles and all this stuff, and there's accidents and things that obviously, and the exception proves the rule, is that purity prevents 100% of the cases. And so, and you can go 99.999 like they do on the little spray bottle of Lysols, but you understand the whole point is basically you can't survive if you are a pure people. And that's the whole point here, is people are starting to die, 24,000 in this plague, and these people are arrogantly allowing it. And so they had to do a severe case here, and that's why he had to hang them up before the people against the sun, so the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. When you have a disease, especially a sexually transmitted disease, it's allowed in your country because God is angry with those people. Somebody has a disease now obviously, again, there's accidents, a child and a mother was deviant and the child is born with AIDS or something like that. I'm not talking about that. The people that bring that stuff up are just trying to look for excuses why they should continue their sin. But the fact remains that in general, it's spread by those who are deviant. And God is angry with them, that's why they have it. And Moses said unto the judges of Israel. Now notice again, it's not to the pastors, it's not to the individuals, it's to the judges. Those who make determinations according to what? The law. Christians are free from the law, and that's another message. But he says, Moses said unto the judges of Israel, slay every one his men that are joined unto Baal-peor. Not the other people's men, but if in that district that they are in, they were to slay them. Now, it wasn't the job of every person to do it. It was the job of that judge to command that person be slain, because he is committing fornication and causing the children of Israel to be plagued. So it's not like, oh, I didn't know. It's like there's the command, and here is the penalty, and therefore, person in Israel, you're not supposed to do it. Well, I'm going to do it anyway. Hey, that's called criminal activity. And knowing that something causes a disease and spreading, you ever heard of Typhoid Mary? She wanted to be a cook. And yet every time she cooked a meal for somebody who hired her, she killed them because she had typhoid. And she would constantly be killing people. She would run off and change her name and be killing people because I just want to be a cook. I just want to cook. But she had typhoid. They eventually, she was caught, I believe, and she was executed for killing people. But I was just cooking food. What's so bad about cooking food? That's the mentality a lot of sexually deviant people have. Why doesn't the church accept me? Why can't I live this lifestyle? I feel this way. Why can't you just accept my feelings? Because you're deviant, you're going to destroy society. That's why. And you're going to cause plague, you're going to kill people and send a lot of people to hell because of your deviant behavior, because you want to compromise Christianity with the way you feel. Christ doesn't feel about your feelings. Care about your feelings, whatever. So I'm being infiltrated by conservative talk shows. All right. But anyway, so I need to go punish myself. I don't know. Anyway, okay. And Moses said unto the judge of Israel, slay every one of the men that were joined unto Baal-peor. Now Baal-peor, of course, you know, like I said, Peor is Mount Peor. There is like a perspective of faith, and Baal is the perspective of their god. And so slay everyone who was compromising with the Lord of this deviant behavior, that are worshiping these idols and having these intercourses, because they were linked together. The way you became a worshiper of Baal was to interact in fornication in the temple priests and all those things. And behold, one of the children of Israel. Now notice this, he says, behold. When the Bible says behold, it's a wondrous sight. Here the command is already given. Everybody in every district already knows you ain't supposed to do this. There's a disease going on through the camp. God is angry with us. And you're causing fornication, you're causing destruction through your deviant behavior, and you are causing this disease to be spread, and you should stop it now, or you will be executed. And here's this children, behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianite woman. Now this is not this guy who's like, well, I just gotta, spread my wild oats, and I gotta secretly do this, and I'm ashamed of my sin. This is the person who says, oh, there's the command? Well, look at my girlfriend. Hey guys, not only am I going to hang out with this girl here, I want you guys to have her after I'm done with her. Basically, after the command was given, this leader in Israel, the Bible says that he's a leader in Israel, he was basically over in verse 8. Let's go look at verse 15. No, verse 14. The name of the Israelite that was slain was even that was slain with the Midianitish woman was Zimri, the son of Salu, and a prince of a chief house among the Simeonites. So this is not just kind of like I'm just a poor guy. I don't got any friends and stuff. I'm just going to, I don't have a wife yet. Nobody cares about me. Nobody knows about me. This is a guy who's in a position of power, position of authority, a position to influence a lot of people. And he not only takes the woman, but publicly brings him to his brothers, to his brethren. Brethren, they're basically not just close kin, but to everybody in his society, in his circles, because everybody was called a brother in Israel, in his tribe. And he's bringing them to everybody and saying, "Hey, I'm going to stand up against this law. I don't believe this law is so I'm going to be what is that thing when you're opposing something in the law and you're criminally protesting something? I'm not sure, but I forget that word. I'm not very criminally minded. But basically, you're protesting by participating in the activity. And he says he came and brought unto his brethren. And the Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses. So this person is intentionally coming into the camp, and he's bringing her into the camp, not just to have her as his wife, which would be bad enough, knowing the law, but rather he's going to have her, and then he wants his brothers to have her after he does. And in fact, the implication is probably also that they want to commit an orgy with this girl and have deviant behavior, and not only deviant behavior, but publicly, in the sight of the congregation. Now this is not just off in the camp somewhere, I'm going to sneak off over into Moab and have this girl. But no, he brings the girl in the middle of the camp, in the middle near the temple, and as somebody in position to influence a lot of people, says, hey, I'm defying these judges. I'm defiling the commands of the Lord. The Bible says this is an abomination, but I'm going to say, no, it's not an abomination. It's a wonderful thing. It's the way God made us, and we should participate in it. And all praise be to Baal-peor. And inside of all the congregation of the children of Israel, they made the command. They're having a church service in front of the tabernacle. He brings intentionally, it's like they're at the tabernacle, and then behold, this man is bringing the Midianitish woman, drawing his brethren away from the church service to go have this activity over in his tent right next to the church service in front of the temple. And so, in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle. People are dying because of this. They're crying out to the Lord, Lord, stop this plague. Stop them from doing this evil deed. And all he cares about is his flesh. They don't care about what they're doing to the congregation. They don't care that 24,000 people are dying. What do they care about? Their flesh. Well, accept my identity. Accept who I am. See? This will destroy the children of Israel if they don't stop it. They'll destroy us as Christians if we don't stop it. And in the sight of the congregation, the children of Israel, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he arose up from among the congregation, took the javelin in his hand, and went after the man of Israel into the tent, and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly, so the plague was stayed from the children of Israel. Now we understand, of course, that this is supposed to be done by the judges. This is supposed to be a command. There's supposed to be a jury trial. There's supposed to be, they're supposed to say, hey, you did this deed, and there's supposed to be 2 witnesses and things. But here he is doing it arrogantly. He's doing it rebelliously. Now, understand this is that if we were in society today, and somebody takes a child off the street in our sight and tries to kidnap the child and perhaps even try to mess with that child in public in a sodomite way, what are we as people supposed to do? That person has abducted that person. We kill them, right? Do we wait for the jury trial? Do we wait for the police officer? No. If somebody's having bodily harm done to them, what are we supposed to do? Stop that bodily harm, right? That's what he was doing here. It's not like he's taking it upon himself. He's going to get a cape, and he's going to go around killing all these people in a vigilante style. He's not the one who initiated this event. It's the man who goes before the congregation and says, hey, I'm going to violate this law, and I'm going to fornicate, and I'm going to cause more disease that you're weeping about. And whoever wants to have free sex and free love, come with me and leave these fools by themselves. He says, hey, you're going to destroy our nation. You're going to destroy God's people. God is angry at us now. I'm going to stop this right now. And you're not going to be arrogant about this. This is not just a law you can skirt around and everybody's going, oh, I guess it's not that good of a law. I couldn't stop it. You know, gun-free zones, like really. Anyway, so there, yeah, not political again. Okay. Anyway, and when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he arose up from among the congregation, took the javelin in his hand. Now, if somebody were to come into this church and start trying to harm somebody in this church, are we the men of the church to stop such a thing? And right, yeah, we are. You understand that it's not a joyous thing to do. Yay, I finally get to do it! I wanted to kill somebody! Oh, thank you for doing it! No! It's not, nobody wants to kill anybody. Anyway. And he took the javelin in his hand, and he went after the man of Israel into the tent, and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly, so the plague was stayed from the children of Israel. One man, stopping an arrogant behavior, saved a nation. Sometimes people think, well, you know, what can I do to stand up against abortion? What can I do to stand up against deviant behavior? First of all, I don't recommend taking a javelin in your hand and stabbing people that are committing the things. Now, but obviously, this is not something where he was just going tent to tent and doing. This is somebody who came and did a violent act in front of trying to draw people away. The command was given. It would just be like a law was passed here, perhaps, and then somebody says, free abortions down in my van, right down here. Now, obviously, somebody goes down to the abortion clinic. Right now, obviously, we're not going to go blow up abortion clinics and all this garbage that people do. We're going to legislate against it. We're going to call for the law to stop it. But if somebody comes along and then starts calling with a megaphone outside, he got a rusty old van outside, his tent, if you will, and he's like maybe he's even on a board of one of these abortion clinics. He comes out there with a bullhorn and says, all the women in your church, come on out and have an abortion. He starts performing abortions on people. What are you going to do to that guy? You know, I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to do what I can. I mean, obviously, I'm going to prevent any woman from getting into his creepy old van. You know, but extreme examples like that. But the thing is, And it's not normal in our society, thank goodness, yet. But that's what was happening here. Creepy old man in his tent is saying to the people in the congregation, come over here and fornicate, and we know that this is a horrible disease that's going around the camp, and who cares? Free love, free sex in my tent. And there's a law already made against it, and he's doing this as a protest against the law. And you're sitting right next to the leader of the nation. What are you going to do? You got to stop it. Now, if somebody is trying to harm children, and they come into your nursery and start pulling out children they like, what are you going to do? Now, obviously. And so the thing we need to understand is that no, we're not going to go and kill people, but we need to defend the people. And we've got to do what was right in the right way. And here a law was already passed. Now, somebody comes along and abortions are illegal. It's like Ohio just made it, it's illegal to do abortions in Ohio. I think it is now. They passed a law or something. Something like, I'm not sure exactly about the law. But if abortion was illegal in your city and in your town, and some guy opens up an abortion clinic and then brags that he's going to be doing these things, what would we want the police to do? Get out of the church house, get out of wherever they're doing, and say, free abortions on Sunday! And we would say, hey, mayor of the city, if you're at church, go stop this guy. Hey, chief of police, who's at church, go stop this guy. He just announced this thing. He's doing it arrogantly. We'd stop it. And those that died in the plague were 24,000. He stopped more people from dying. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, hath turned away my wrath away from the children of Israel. Remember, the first time this happened, a flood came. When it happened with Solomon later on, a nation was divided. Happens later on, further down the road, and it almost destroys the start of the Jewish state. And it happens too often, more than we would think, in many Christian communities. It says, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, hath turned my wrath away from the children of Israel. He prevented them from being destroyed before they got started. While he was zealous for my sake among them, that I consumed not the children of Israel in my jealousy. See, he saved a lot of lives from doing this. Now, we're not supposed to randomly go around killing people because we don't like the way they live their lifestyle, obviously. But if somebody is in immediate danger, and somebody like a typhoid Mary is going around killing people by making them a meal, what's bad about a meal? And somebody's doing those things, then yeah, you got to stop it if it's an immediate danger. This is the law. Is like if you have an immediate danger, you have to stop it. You're justified in defending yourself. Obviously we're not supposed to kill people, but if somebody attacks us, we're supposed to stop it. And we'll do more messages on that, of course. Ethic defense or whatever. And now he says, and he shall have it. It's in verse 11. That I consume not the children of Israel in my jealousy. Wherefore say, behold, I give unto my covenant of peace. And he shall have it, and the seed after him shall even the covenant of my everlasting priesthood, because he was zealous for his God, and made an atonement for the children of Israel. See, Phinehas receives the lineage for the high priest. So whenever there's a high priest of man in Israel, it'll be after the lineage of Phinehas. Is basically what it's saying, because I want, when a high priest stands before me, is God saying, I want it to be of a descendant of Phinehas, because Phinehas is the type of person I want. So in other words, when a high priest stands before, on behalf of a nation for his people, he wants them to have the spirit of Phinehas. His anger against wickedness, his desire to atone and protect the children of Israel, to save them alive. Nobody likes killing, but if, to stop a plague, to stop murder of death of innocent people, we're going to kill a Hitler. We're going to kill a Mao Zedong. We're going to kill all these wicked people that try to bring death and destruction to this world. I give to him my covenant of peace, and he shall have it, and his seed after him, even the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. When God says everlasting, I mean that believes everlasting. Because he was zealous for his God and made an atonement for the children of Israel. And the atonement for Israel was the slaying of these two people. Remember, the sacrifices are a substitute for the person that committed the thing. If you commit a sin, and then you're worthy of death according to God, but the substitute takes that burden upon itself and takes your place in the fire. So too, this atonement took the place of Israel as a nation in the fire of God's jealousy. Now the name of Israelite that was slain, even that was slain with the Midianitish woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, a prince of the chief of the house of the Simeonites. Now I always like, real quickly before we finish here, I always like to kind of look at what people's name, if it mentions their names, what it looks like, what they're called. And here in this passage we see that his name is called the Israelite. Now Israel means prince with God. He has authority with God. So the Israelite who has authority with God was slain with Zimri. Zimri means my musician, or my gardener, or my mountain sheep, or song of the Lord. And so basically his name means something belonging to the Lord, in a general sense, something beautiful belonging to the Lord. And then the son of Salu, which means contempt. Salu means contempt. And then a prince of the chief house of the Simeonites. And Simeonites means hearing. And so if you take his name together, in a general sense, he's a prince with God. He's a prince among his people. A prince means you have influence. You have influence with, Genesis chapter 32 verse 28 says about being a prince with God, or about being an Israelite, means that he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. And why the name of Israel? Israel means, for as a prince. If you are Israel, you are a prince of God. A prince that has power with God. Because you are an Israelite, you are a prince. You have a power with God and with men, and has prevailed. So you have influence with God and with men, and what you do in this life as an Israelite matters. You'll either draw people away from God, or you'll draw people to God. Why do you think there's big conspiracy? Oh, those Jews over there trying to, with the banks and all this, and and they have influence over Hollywood. The generation of vipers underneath the covenant of Israel, they have influence to draw men away from God or draw people to God. And that's why the devil loves to influence the covenant so much. And so the thing is that this prince of God, somebody who influences men and has power with God and influences men, took the things of God, my garden, my sheep, my mountain, my song, the things of God, and he held them in contempt, and therefore God hears what you're doing. He sees what you're doing. So a prince of God is responsible to God for what he does, and God is hearing what they do. He hears, and when he heard, he became angry and jealous, and then this thing stayed the thing. So here in this passage we see his name basically shows us the story. Somebody who had influence among his people, being contemptible with God's people, was destroyed because God saw it and heard it. And then also the Midianitish woman. The name of the Midianitish woman, Midian means a strife or place of judgment. Compromised Christian there, somebody who's judged by God, chastised by God. A woman was slain, was Cosby. Now that's not Bill Cosby's daughter, but Cosby means false or lying. This is Zer Cosby, but not Bill Cosby. False or lying. And Zer means rock. And so this is basically when you as a prince with God takes the things of God and gives it to a false rock, will bring upon yourself judgment. And so that's what I get out from those names. And a lot of times when God puts the names in there, he wants us to get an idea of it. And whether or not these ideas, these names came after the fact or before the fact, is that we can look at these names and we can look at what they mean, and then the whole story falls out from their names. And that's always quite interesting when you look at those names, is the fact that he added them to the end there. Just like when the Egyptianitis, the Israelite Egyptian son did his things, they listed his names, and it brought out the same problem. Same thing with these names here, is God saying that when you take, as a person of God, when you take his things and you cast it to a false rock, you yourself will be judged. That's what happens in this passage. But because Phineas was zealous for the things of God and would not stand for it, would not allow it in their midst, in the congregation, he went out against that evil tent and destroyed these people and made atonement for the Lord. So when we stand against wickedness in this church, when we cast out people that are in alternative lifestyles, not because we enjoy, we understand that it's important to be zealous for these things. It's not a fun thing to be zealous for, but if we stand against it, we can be an atonement for our church, and rather than bringing the judgment of God upon our church, we can be influence for the whole community. We can influence the people around us. We can be a prince with God that it can influence men for righteousness rather than wickedness like this evil man. We can be a Phineas rather than Zimri. So the thing is, where are you going to stand? Are you going to be weak against sin, allow it to destroy and consume people around you? Or are you going to be strong against sin, be like a Phineas and make atonement for your nation? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you, bless you, give us, Lord. I pray that you'll continue to guide and bless us. Help us to do what is right. Help us to be righteous. Help us to, in immediate danger, to do the right thing and defend the weak, defend the gullible, defend those who are against those who are arrogant and contemptible and try to take your things and destroy those things. Let us stand against the false preachers. Let us stand against the wicked people, the wicked vipers that try to infiltrate your people, that try to pretend to be righteous but are not. Let us live a righteous life and not a fleshly life. In Jesus I pray. Amen.